you walk here? Did you drive?
He might have.
I took Bart.
You took Bart?
Took Bart from the house,
Uh-huh.
and then and it was so efficient that I was here early, so we walked around and I had some choices of different coffee shops and picked one along the way, and then was able to get a few phone calls in when the car arrived. Yeah.
We can be able to close that door.
A lot of coffee shops, a lot of pot clubs around
That-
That's right.
I didn't notice the pot clubs. The coffee shops I do. They're not the same thing, right?
Wait till lunchtime.
There aren't any bouncers outside.
Roastery takes on a new meaning.
We leave this microphone on the table where it is.
Yes, is that okay?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't required to clip it on or something. All right.
Thanks for asking.
Okay.
Tick, 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 tick.
We're 1 minute away.
1 minute.
Kat, are you ready for when we go sign? Kat? Are you ready for whenever we do the
Video.
Let's clap right here. Okay, welcome to the Chronicle editorial board. Mayor Ed Lee. We're making a little history today. This is our first live streamed editorial board meeting, and appreciate your willingness to take part in this experiment with transparency. So this is, as part of our endorsement process that you're here today. And as always, same format as when there are no cameras here. We'll give you a chance to make an opening statement, and then we'll go with questions. Welcome, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you to you, the editorial board, for inviting me here to talk about my candidacy. And of course, the big question is why I want to be mayor for the third time, interim, first term, and second term. Well, I've had a chance to do some reflection, particularly leading up to this, but also as I begin to articulate what I want to do in the second term, I realized that we've been able to do a lot in the interim year. When I was tapped to be the interim mayor, I asked that we work on the things that challenge the city the most of the time. And as people recall, we were still struggling to come out of a really bad recession. Everybody around me was saying, get the city going economically, make sure we have jobs and kids and people coming out of all kinds of circumstances. And so I knew that has always been something that was a strong foundational need in the city. So I went to work, and as interim mayor and trying to rustle up all my experience in the different capacities that I had, I worked on making sure the city was financially strong so that we could create and sustain jobs for people. And so I worked on the budget. There was, as you recall, a $385 million budget deficit, and we were able to fix that. Then people said the other thing we needed you to do was start seriously talking about runaway pension costs, because that was going to kill whatever we were going to do. And so I said, well, let's get everybody in a room together. And 8 months later, we put on the ballot a unified collaborative pension reform that got the unions as well as the business folks as well as the city employees engaged. And I think people were surprised, but I was quite confident that if we talk to people the right way, even the most sensitive item in that, particularly the employees today that were willing to pay more, not just put it on future classes, but current classes willing to pay more into their pensions, and even create a healthcare trust that would help with what was expected to be something that would really pressure our general fund in future years. So that pension reform, I think, was a big item. We were able to do that. Then I began to work on making sure that the city had and continued to have a collaborative discussion, because I knew that that was just the beginning. And I did not at that time, as you recall, have the intention of running for mayor, and I think as circumstances happened, I made that choice to run for mayor. And at that time, again, we set out to identify what we ought to be doing in the first term, and identified things that I learned during the campaign, as well as years of experience, and that is, I can't help anybody be successful unless we have an economically strong city. And I worked with a lot of our financial experts, the controller office, our budget office, to not only maintain some of the good things that we did, whether it was pension reform or budget, but to see whether or not we could really cement some of the smart economic things that we did. And so 2-year budgeting, 5-year financial planning, 10-year capital plans that I had been able to author when Gavin was mayor. And those became, I think, some very strong foundations. And during the first term, I tried to cement those in and also keep a very strong dialogue with the board about economics. And to this day, I truly believe that those things that we did and started 4.5 years ago have become central to why we're such a strong economic city, that we can tout a 3.6% unemployment rate, that we have strong investments in transportation, and now, of course, the tremendous crisis that we have in housing, that we can afford to do many more things, as well as provide a very strong social safety net for people who really need our services and depend upon it for their literal survival, if not transformation. I think, and I'm very proud of the 4.5 years that I've helped lead the city on both the economic side of it, but also on the job creation. On when you look back, and I know there's a spike in crime, but I'm looking at both immediate trends and long-term trends. The ability to keep a good look at how the homicide spikes and the crime go up and down, and what we could do as a city, not just in law enforcement, but also in job creation, and aiming our social safety net and our social programs at the areas of poverty in the city that might be inducers to more crime, or have our youth. A lot of them have, over the years, expressed to me and to many agencies the degrees of hopelessness that they have in not having more options. And that allowed me to really have a strong focus on social programs, job creation programs, programs that really reached into the areas where the lowest income kids, and pulled them into programs that we have tested, particularly job-related programs, and also after-school programs, what I call IPO programs, the programs that interrupt, that have our police officers, but other agencies do predictive safety issues, and then organizing within the community around things that kids positively want to have. All through that 4.5 years, I've never let my eye off of something that brought me to the city and county of San Francisco, and actually allowed me to be a young attorney, and that is housing. I know we have a crisis. I feel that, and I know literally every conversation I have is embedded with somebody saying, please make sure that you pay attention. We need more housing that's affordable. And while that is a very strong mantra, it's incredibly complex, and it involves so many things. But I go back to the days where I advocated for better housing as a young attorney, and I realized that it was all combinations of things that have to happen, and happen at a very deliberate speed in order to respond to this crisis. I am excited going forward because I know I have some answers to deliver to the public. I know that when our administration has agreed to do something, and we were very deliberate about it, we brought a lot of people together. So it was pension reform, the transportation bond, whether it was the economy and creating jobs, When we were able to articulate and think through smart planning for that, we brought a lot of people together and we accomplished it. And I'm going to do the same thing with, I think, two of the most challenging issues of our time, and that is affordable housing and homelessness. I am making sure that this is right in front of me, that I have everybody in the city administration and the board of supervisors helping us deliver on a multitude of things that would increase the housing capacity of the city. I'm not just dependent upon a $310 million Proposition A housing bond that doesn't raise taxes, but I've got to do a lot of other things that make sure that we have stabilized neighborhoods, that we preserve the housing stock. Clearly, we can't build out, because if I don't watch out for stabilizing the neighborhoods and making sure we preserve the housing, we could literally lose as many units as we're trying to build, and it takes a long time to build housing. I'm a true believer to rehab existing quality housing, but at the same time, I think we have dilapidated public housing, and I'm going to make sure that our plan is to rebuild the public housing as much as we can, do it in a way in which we don't follow the mistakes of the old redevelopment, do it by investing with the people who live there and having them come on board, not only with the designs, but with the appropriate involvement and job creation, and building neighborhoods rather than just the housing units. I think in Sunnydale and Alice Griffith and Hunters Point, and now more and more we're talking about West Side as well, because there are more partners surfacing up in the nonprofit sector and in the for-profit sector that want to revitalize these entire neighborhoods, and they see that if we do it in the vision in which we've espouted, that a lot of people can encircle what has been isolated poverty and rebuild those communities in a strong way and have a really strong support for small businesses. I know we're getting to a lot of questions, but I am excited to do this. Let me say one word about homelessness. I think I've been working on for over almost a year now on our best example of our city's compassion, and that is the Navigation Center. I wanted to make sure that we learned from the attributes of Homeless Connect, that we learned from the things that are not working at the homeless shelters, that we got the engagement of people who have been dedicated to ending homelessness, whether it's for veterans or kids or families, got their expertise along with health, along with human services, and then got a dose of philanthropic dollars to sponsor this Navigation Center. That is the best foot forward that we have up to this time. And I want to thank Gavin Newsom for all of his courageous years of Care Not Cash and the rapid rehousing and Homes First, because that drove us towards this Navigation Center that has now been praised by the strongest advocates and also the strongest critics. Now, having said that, that's a small example. I need about 4 to 5 of these Navigation Centers. They cost, but they have, at the end of it, and this is where the big cost is, and where I'm asking for a lot of help, and I did so even yesterday with the Hotel Council, the Hospital Council, the people that are doing, hosting our Super Bowl. I asked them, take a look at the Nav Center, brought them down there, and I said, I need your help here, because I need to make sure that as we are ready to move people off the streets for good reason, that we're not moving them from one neighborhood to the other, from one corner to the other. That's not what we do. In a compassionate effort, we try to transform people's lives the best way that we can and give them the foundation to make sure that they can live more independent lives and more successful lives. The Nav Center represents that. But I've got to have it backed up by long-term housing. I've got to have it backed up by mental health hospital beds for those that I know are on the streets whose behavior exhibited reflects some very deep mental health challenges that we have in the city. That's part of the homeless challenge, is the mental illness that is exhibited on our streets that sometimes is symbolized by inappropriate behavior, dangerous behavior, defecation, urination, all of that we don't like. It doesn't snap your finger, disappear. We actually have to focus on the causes for that, and I'm willing to do that. I've had hours of conversation with Barbara Garcia, our health director, particularly focused on mental health. We've been meeting with the judges who meet it at the criminal level and realize the criminal justice system is not the answer. It's got to be a public health system that is backed up with the courts. And we're getting more and more conversations going with the hospital council, and they are nodding their heads, because guess what? These acute cases end up not just at General Hospital. They end up at St. Francis. They end up at CPMC. They end up at Southern. That's it. All of the charitable hospital hours, much of it is spent dealing with the 400 individuals out there who rotate through the criminal justice system every few weeks, and they're costing us millions of dollars, and we've got to have a better answer than one we have now. That's also what's behind what I call the Navigation Center, is really some long-term solutions. I am willing not only to do this as mayor, but to do it in the way in which I've been successful, getting the best minds, having a collaborative spirit with the board, but also being very practical about it, and then making sure that I say to the public and the people who are seeing every single day as part of their anxietous trip sometimes down these corridors, you know, they're smelling things, they're seeing things, they're meeting up with some behavior that is challenging to them and their families, and to say to them that I will work on this and I will be very successful in getting this out, but I want to do it the right way. And the way forward is to say that we have to be even more compassionate to people, not sentimental compassion. Compassion that says there is a rule on the streets. One, we shouldn't allow people to live on the streets. It's dangerous to themselves. It's dangerous to each other. It feeds upon other elements that want to sell them drugs and all the other negative things. It's a danger. It's a health hazard to be on the streets. That's the real compassion. And I've got to be able to sustain that beyond the Super Bowl events, beyond the Dreamforce and the open world events, to where we really care about these individuals strongly enough that we will get them into a ability to navigate their way through and support them. But I've got to have rules on the street that reinforce that as well. And this is where a healthy infusion of dollars that we now can afford to do in the public safety system, but how they do it, backed up by, I think, an incredible investment that I'm asking the city to consider, which is thousands of more units of housing, and both in short term and long term. In the long term, I'm already thinking about modular housing to try to cut the costs down and make sure that our developers, both for-profit and nonprofit, are bringing in ideas that can sustain the affordability of housing while we figure this out. So, housing crisis, I'm willing to spend a lot of time on, put all my expertise on. Homelessness, quality of life on the streets, making sure our neighborhoods continue what I think has been fairly successful, the invest in neighborhoods and strong support for our small businesses. With that, I'm sure you have a lot of issues, and there could be a lot of contradictions in this, but I'm willing to explain as much as I can what we can do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to want to follow up with a question about housing, but first a couple quick program notes. First of all, even though you know everybody here at the table, since we're live streaming, when you ask a question, identify yourself. And second, if you're watching on sfchronicle.com, if you have a question or you have a running comment on what's going on, the hashtag is AskSF. Let me ask you, and I'm John Diaz, the editorial page editor. Let me ask you about housing. A lot is being done incrementally. We have, the evictions legislation that we wrote about this morning. There's a ballot measure on short-term rentals. We have the in-law units were legalized. The $310 million housing bond that you alluded to. Do you think that there is sufficient works in the pipeline to address this housing crisis, or do things need to be done either with new strategies or a scale that's not being talked about that you're willing to push in your second term? Give us an idea. Is it reasonable to expect that in this next term that the housing crisis is going to look a lot different 4 years from now?
Well, I think I have articulated through the housing bond a multitude of approaches. So I know that building and rehabbing 30,000 units of housing in the next 4 or 5 years is accomplishable. But within that, we have to pay attention to how to get a bulk of those 30,000 units, which I know are planned throughout the city already. These are the reason why I'm so confident about that number is because Park Merced, Hunters Point Shipyard, Treasure Island, Viz Valley, projects like the Giants seawall lot, as well as are going to be approved, have already been approved. We calculate those numbers, and then my job is to make sure that we figure out the affordability of those units. And I've assured the public that 33% of that will be permanently affordable to low income, and that additional percentages, up to 51%, will be affordable to middle income, to teachers, to hospital workers, to people that do have jobs that are finding it incredibly hard to afford to be here. That's why this housing bond is important, because it reflects not just the building of it, but monies to go into the first time focus on middle income families, to have them have both a renter and a buy down assistance program. It also, as I said earlier, to make sure that we use part of the money, and we're already using general fund money, to buy down the cost of land. Land cost is one of the biggest factors for why there is such a high cost of housing in the city. And so I know that the more land that we can buy down, and then that's going to result in more of these developments being more affordable. The other is to make sure that we allow developers who are developing expensive housing to help us in a way in which we might not be able to do it ourselves. I need the private sector, and this is why I don't believe that a moratorium would be that helpful in the city to stop development, because I think we are beginning to see the power of the private developments and making those connections to how they can increase their contributions to affordability in the city, if we give them both the incentive and the connections. And one of the things that I'm excited about in part of the packages that we've introduced to the board is allowing developers to actually get credit for investing in historically rent-controlled buildings in the city so that we can stabilize neighborhoods. That, to me, is an exciting connection. Because guess what? In the conversation about housing, I know people have to say, okay, you're going to build all this housing, but it will take you at least, Mayor, 2 to 3 to 5 years. We're faced with some pressures right now. I don't know who my landlord's going to be. The South Beach residents who were the recipients of 25 years of affordability, they and hundreds of others in the Fillmore, through London Breed and others, are asking what's going to happen to my building in 1 or 2 years when that affordability is given up because of the old redevelopment agreements have exhausted. What are you going to do about that? And that's like now. And that's why I needed a stream of connection, revenues and other monies to be focused on stabilizing those buildings. We had in the past bought those buildings. Can we continue to buy the buildings, or should we also have other streams of revenue to help us do it? I'm willing to buy as many as I can, but I don't think I can afford the general fund to buy every single building under challenge. This is why I think we need these new kinds of legislative approaches that Supervisor Farrell is excited about. I know Scott and Julie Christensen are all trying to be as innovative as they can to complement ways in which we can do it. And therefore, I think the invitation is more ideas in that avenue of supporting affordability in the city will be helpful. And this is, again, I think a reflection that I want to be the mayor to do this, because I think I have the ability to talk to a lot of people and not place people in a position where they feel they can't be innovative.
Can I follow up on that? Hi, I'm Emily Green. I'm the City Hall reporter. That 33% goal, Supervisor Jane Kim wanted to put it on the ballot as a binding resolution, basically to say that all new housing in the city, 33% of it had to be affordable, and you balked. Essentially, you said you didn't want it to be binding, and it became a much more watered down goal. Why?
Because the way some individuals approach it is they take the number and they become rigid. I think when you're trying to be innovative, there are projects that then go 40%, like what the Giants are doing, and there are projects that go 20%. So if someone suggests, well, 33% is a good number, let's impose that on everybody, it's not economically feasible for every project to adhere to that number. There are projects that we will incentivize to go well beyond 33%. Then there are projects that simply don't make sense because of their size, their location. So I think it is better to have a degree of flexibility and an overall goal that we're held accountable rather than a rigid goal that cannot be accomplished on a development by development basis. Financial experts tell you that. Developers who know this area tell you that, both for-profit and nonprofit. And so I have to kind of balance out a sentimental numerical goal to a practical, realistic invitation to be innovative in the city. To me, I think innovation requires us to be flexible, yet still get the goal done. And this is my approach to it. And I'm a strong believer that, and I truly believe that the examples that we are already seeing that are invitations to developers are gaining a lot more traction than what they told me was if you impose a rigid goal and we can't figure it out, our investor confidence in the city will not be there. And we're talking to the very entities that put money down in these projects, and they're willing to do more if we're cooperative partners with them.
Mary, I wanted to get your perspective.
Identify yourself, please.
Oh, yeah. I'm Brandon Mercer. I'm the executive producer of SF Gate. And I wanted to get from you, our readers are very interested in San Francisco's homeless problem, as are a lot of national readers. Here's my question. If you were homeless and I gave you a $10 BART card, what Bay Area city would you go to and why?
Well, if I was homeless and you gave me a BART card, I would say, thank you, I'm staying in San Francisco because I hear about this navigation center that the mayor, I want to get in. I have to be truthful with you. I've been walking the streets of San Francisco for the last month, and I've encountered a lot of people. And I just encountered a young woman with her dog on Market Street just as. And so let's get her story down. Let's see what's happening with her. And I remember her name being Ruth. I don't know. I didn't know on that day if we had any capacity. I believe 40 hours later, I think yesterday, I got notice that she was able to get into the navigation center. It can't happen for everybody. I know that the word is out that what we have produced there is such a powerful message of support and compassion that people probably from all walks of challenges want to have success in the city. Now, I'm very cognizant that I don't want to be the attractor for everybody who's got a housing crisis in their life, because I've got right now 6,800 homeless people in San Francisco that we've accounted for. At any point in time, 3,500 of them are on the streets. The rest of them are in various shelters and in different beds and other places. I've got to take care of what we have and do it well and bring confidence to others who are also seeing them and wishing something can happen that's a lot more positive. And again, I repeat, I'm not going to move people from one corner to the other. I want to have a compassionate, long-term, disciplined city answer to their lives. And I think the reality is that more people are going to want to stay in San Francisco because they know we're a compassionate city. But I'm also saying I don't want to be an invitation. So I've got to get people off the streets. I do truly believe that our compassion leads us that we've got to reduce the number on the streets. By the end of this year of 2015, I have 500 units of housing dedicated to people coming out of the navigation center. 150 at the end of this month, 150 in October, and the rest coming by the end of the year through our negotiations of property owners who have in the past deliberately kept units off the market, but they're willing to master lease with the city as long as we put some staff in those buildings, which I believe is the new model. That not just housing people, I think we have to have case managers in connection ongoing basis so that people don't get back into the bad environments that they have. And this is where at the Navigation Center plea, my request to the business groups is to help us establish more of these centers, but also help me pay for the long-term housing. But I'm honest with you about that example you gave me. I know that that's where people want to be, but I also know that we don't want them on our streets, living and surviving on our streets with the kinds of activities that we see.
Currently, Deborah Saunders, what do you do about people who don't want to be helped? They don't want to go into a center. They don't want to follow rules. What does the city do about that?
Well, I hope to demonstrate that the majority of people on our street want to go in, and like Ruth, like others who you don't even know, but they want to be. They want to get help, and they want to get shelter, and they want the support to be successful. There are going to be some people who resist any kind of help, and I have to work with my health professionals to understand why. Because for you and me, it's so logical to want shelter and to want health support and to get out of the situation. I truly believe that there's a group of people that cannot make that decision, and I have to approach it not so much in the criminal way as it is in the health way. And this is where health experts are going to help guide me about why people can't make a rational decision.
And what do you do about that?
Well, for
Practically.
one, I think we have to, first of all, understand what that challenge is. If it's behavioral health, a mental health challenge, or if it's drug abuse, we will know that because we'll have health experts out there telling me, I'm already paying for a mobile health group of people to go out and make some assessments for me about who's who. We will know people's names on the streets. We will know what they're all about. And if I get case managers to help me understand that, then we have the beginning. We're this fall opening up Laura's Law so that family members can be identified to assist with individuals' inabilities to make the right decision. Ultimately, Deborah, we have to have a better conversation in this city about conservatorship, about long-term care for people who need it. And I'm going to be guided by mental health experts and judges who see these cases every day and know that the criminal justice system is failing us with these individuals, and I've got to have a health and a public health response to that. That'll get us to the right decisions. And I may have to say, you can't be on the streets. You simply can't be there.
Mayor Lee, on that immediate question, I'm Miller, I'm one of the editorial writers, and I'm monitoring readers' questions on Twitter, and I'm seeing 2 or 3 of them who are specifically asking you about the Super Bowl and your comments about the homeless around the Super Bowl. You said that you would make them go away, essentially. People are wondering, what are you going to do about that? Why for that particular event? Could you explain your comments on the homeless
Sure.
Super Bowl a little bit more?
Sure. I don't think I use the words "make them go away,"
That's
but
what people are rephrasing it.
Right. No, I think the Super Bowl, when we bid on it and we offered up areas of the city to have a celebration of one of the largest American sports, I wanted a city that would welcome that. To the extent that people are staying on our streets, I want those streets to be used for that event, and so we're going to help people off the streets. We shouldn't have people living on the streets in those areas that we have agreed in hosting this with an event. And so I simply said that people shouldn't be on the streets and that we will help them. And the way we help them, this is why I have a navigation center. This is why we're negotiating units of housing for them, because we're going to help them off the streets by offering them the opportunity not only to come through the navigation center, but to have the housing for it.
But what about people who continually break the law? I spoke to you before. You talked about a lot of people with big drug problems. I went to the navigation center. I talked to a guy who told me that he made a living by stealing from parking lots, you know, the little money that you put in. I mean, there are a number of people on the streets who are breaking the law. What is the role of law enforcement in this?
Well, clearly we should be making sure that we focus on dangerous behavior. Now, I can't, you know, I know there are degrees of behavior. Somebody who's accumulating a cart with stuff that you know is not a professional recycling center. I don't think we're going to be spending a whole lot of time counting the number of cans they took from somebody else's can. But to the extent that there's behavior that threatens somebody else's right to use the street, and I've heard those stories, behavior can be very dangerous out there. We've got to curtail that. There've got to be rules that are abided by, and I'm making sure that our police officers get at the dangerous behavior. I clearly think that defecating in front of somebody is an extreme health hazard for the individual doing it and the people around it, and of course the cleanup crews that have to deal with it. I think that has to be curtailed. And by the way, our compassion begins with we're investing in monitors for the J.C. Nicole toilets and pit stops. I'm spending hundreds of thousands of dollars of public money to provide monitored places for this. So there shouldn't be excuses for people to defecate in front of others. That should be not acceptable. That is a health hazard. We'll lead that with health. We have to enforce it with the police backup, because that's behavior that's dangerous to everybody else. So there are certain behaviors that we are identifying that should not be tolerated on our streets. Danger to people, danger to others, health hazards, those are the kinds of things.
Mr. Mayor, it's John Wilden, reporter. Is there a concern that your focus on homelessness and housing is taken away from a lot of the other concerns in the city? Transportation, parks, and the neighborhood stuff in general, with all the focus on the bad parts of the city. Is that a concern of yours at all?
Oh, well, first of all, I want to make sure the public knows that through all of the many conversations that my staff and I have, housing and homelessness is at a crisis point, and people want the mayor and the board and the city to do something about it that demonstrates some solutions. So this is where I think the leadership for this. Absolutely not. We passed one of the largest transportation bonds last year, the $500 million transportation bond, without raising taxes.
Were you not opposed to that first?
I'm sorry?
Were you opposed to that bond first?
Was I opposed? I was probably opposed to some versions of it that weren't going to be practical, because I had to be the one that sold it to the public. These general obligation bonds have to be passed by 2/3. If they don't have the collaboration of the mayor and the board together, these are hard to pass. Well, we passed it. And the promise in passing it was that Vision Zero and the incredible investments that this will make towards a $30 billion, I think it's a $3 billion challenge. As you know, we had a 2030 transportation task force that identified billions of dollars of investment we had to make. 500 million is the first. Right now, my responsibility is to make sure that every aspect of that transportation bond is carried out. And we're already carrying out the 28 Vision Zero projects so that we can demonstrate immediately that there are benefits for passing these bonds. And those Vision Zero redesign of streets, signage, information stuff is already out there in a number of neighborhoods being done. So I've never given up, because transportation infrastructure will be a very strong complement to where we're building the housing. It can't be one off on the other, and there's going to be more investments. Just as I think we announce whenever we get an infusion of federal and state dollars, it's because we have a vision for putting this transportation in avenues where our growth is going to be. You're going to see a lot of transportation improvements along 16th Street, for example, because guess what? That's where a lot of the planned housing is. That's where I don't want the overcrowdedness. We're already planning for that. We're planning transportation routes in Mission Bay. We're planning transportation routes to welcome the Warriors Arena. We're planning transportation routes in Hunters Point Shipyard to welcome in the thousands of new units along those areas. So transportation is going to be a critical part of it. At the same time, we have articulated the degree of public safety we should have. 400 additional police officers in the next 2 years, 198 new firefighters, over 50 new paramedics, and over 35 new 911 callers are all part of an incredible investment in making sure our city is safe. I've never left, I think my original mantras in running for mayor 4.5 years ago was, I want a safe city, I want a solvent city, and I want a successful city. Well, no one's going to ever invest in a city that they don't feel safe in, and that's why not only is the public safety budget very strong, I'm willing to consider what the future would look like in terms of the need for public safety. Having said that, I also don't depend just on public safety. Look at what we're doing with our schools and education. I have just convened with Richard Carranza, our superintendent, the first meeting of the Children's and Families First Council that Supervisor Norman Yee helped co-sponsor on Prop C last year, setting aside some $28 million a year in our budget to make sure we are focused on family and children growing up healthy. That's going to lead to parks and open space, but also after-school programs, investments in job skill building, investments in making sure parents are engaged with us. Child care, affordable child care, I think is going to be the new mantra very soon with all the young families that I see walking around their strollers all over the city. They want affordable child care so they can go to work. As you know, a single salary earner ain't going to cut it. Both parents have to work, and they're worried about affordable child care in order to do this. So I've got to be a mayor that works on a multitude of things, but I also have to express that the crisis that people tell me is here, there is a response, there's a plan, and there's a mayor that's unifying the city to make sure we come out with those solutions.
Mayor, I'm Heather Knight, a City Hall reporter. You talk about this affordability crisis like it just kind of sprung up on us, but do you feel like maybe your focus on the economy was almost too successful and has now resulted in a city 4 or 5 years later that has the biggest income inequality gap in the country and a huge affordability crisis? Would you have done anything differently if you could go back 5 years?
Well, I don't want anybody to forget that we united this city to create the highest minimum wage in the country to make sure that our lowest paid workforce got a chance to have a decent salary. We're at the $12.75 mark now. By 2018, we'll be at $15 an hour. And even cities like Berkeley are talking about higher wages. But I know we have welcomed in through our affordability challenge, and we worked on this years ago, not just yesterday. We knew that a lot of folks that are at the lower income levels, and I know, just as anybody else does, that when people mention we are not tech workers that make $150,000 a year, I know that, I understand that. And I know it from my own background. I know there are still a lot of restaurant workers and people that are working in retail that can't make it. So I've got to work for them. I got to make sure, and this is why keeping the cost of muni, making sure we build their infrastructure while they do their best to keep rates down. Having programs like free muni for low-income youth, for seniors, for people with disabilities, assist thousands of people every day, more than get by. I mean, to find $40 a month and be able to spend it on food rather than on muni is an incredible, more than compassion. I think we deal with affordability in many ways. Having a good, free public education system that gives people that pause. You know, everything else is expensive. But by God, this public school system is the best urban school system in the state of California by performance. And now with the private investments that's going on, it gives people pause and additional reason to struggle through on a daily basis to want to be here. And I do think that we're creating more and more of good infrastructure reasons, good programmatic reasons as to why people want to be here, even though it is expensive. I've got to get the housing built. If we don't add capacity to the housing, and this has been a crisis not just yesterday, it's been decades in the making. In fact, I expressed to my staff the other day, see, they should have listened to me when I was a young lawyer. We should have rebuilt the public housing and more housing then, back in the 1970s, when I had even more energy and longer hair. It's been a crisis in the making. It didn't just happen. We allowed it to happen by not paying attention to it. Now we've got to catch up. And I know some people have some anxiety about changes, about more people, but if we don't add that capacity, we're going to find ourselves in an even deeper crisis that we cannot get out. And that's why I say we've got to have a strong economy to be able to do it, because if you don't have a strong economy, you can't help anybody.
Well, but to her question about do you wish you had done anything earlier, like, you know, the Twitter tax break, or maybe focused on building the housing as soon as you got in?
Well, I'm never going to be apologetic about the tax break that we have for mid-market, because when I was running the first term, I smelled everything on mid-market. I saw everything. I heard everything. And I made a promise to myself that if I had an opportunity to be the mayor, an elected mayor, I'm going to change that Market Street. Well, you see the changes coming. I've invited companies to be there, along with Jane Kim and Supervisor Chu. I think we did not expect the amount of success that we enjoy today with some 17 companies, a couple of which didn't even take advantage of the tax break. I don't know if you know this, but Dolby Laboratories and Uber located themselves on mid-market because they wanted to be there. They did not ask for any tax break. And that they have thousands of people there helping create small businesses, helping support the restaurants, all the other accoutrements of having companies like that are there. They're, of course, helping to cause some 5,000 units of housing to be built along that market corridor. There are thousands of jobs that they've helped do. They've supported all kinds of established as well as new establishments to go there. So I am not apologetic. I am actually quite enthusiastic about what has occurred, because those that have been there for decades have walked up to me, and they have, with the most sincerest tone, said, thank you for the investment in Market Street. Would you please keep it going? And by the way, it isn't just the tech companies. It began with the arts organizations in San Francisco who said, let's revitalize Market Street as well. And there's a huge investment in arts programs. Look at the Strand Theater that just opened up, all privately funded, to the tune of over $35 million to take what was a porn theater, and probably next to some inappropriate cash site, taking advantage of low-income folks, transform that into a world-class Strand Theater that I'll be glad to have a lot of people join me in helping. And I think more and more, I want to get rid of all the down-and-out porn theaters if I can, and also the cash sites, and transform it into a lot more positive entities that will keep helping us. And Market Street, you're seeing it happen. I'm very proud of it, because I think it's going to be the avenue of both arts, innovation, entertainment. It's going to be for people both day and night. And you're seeing more and more of the restaurants extend their chairs and tables out to the sidewalks. I think that's going to be an incredible avenue. And my job is to make sure that everybody that goes up and down, including the nonprofits. We have a lot of nonprofits that are there servicing and doing good things, and we're going to support them as well. I'm excited about mid-market. I'm excited because 5 years ago,
every storefront, every third storefront was vacant. And it was skid row as far as I was concerned. And now you've got an exciting avenue that is it's life, and it should be. Market Street is our main avenue for San Francisco, and we should be proud of everything that we do there. And more entities and artists and designers are coming to Market Street, and it's shown what I think the city of San Francisco continues to be. We should be investor confident. People should be willing to invest in San Francisco, not just money, not just financial and development. I think the greatest investment that people are making in San Francisco is they want to start their family. To me, having a kid in the city and county of San Francisco is for me a sign of the best investment, because people who have kids in San Francisco, they are counting on us being good on safety, good on our schools, good on our community neighborhood corridors, good on transportation, all the things that families want, the things that drew me to live here in San Francisco are the things that I want to make sure everybody else knows that we're working on to improve and to attract and sustain.
Mayor Lee, Marshall Kilduff, editorial writer. I had a question about what you've learned on the job in the 4.5 years. You came in, words like consensus, collaboration, collegiality were all very much associated with you in the first term. When you get the second term going, do you think you might change your ways, that will be more aggressive, speak out more often, or do you find the kind of pace you set earlier as the best one, running the job? But more a question about what you've learned as being mayor.
Well, I have learned that there's been appreciation that, I'm not signaling I'm going anywhere after this. I actually want to enjoy some of the fruits that we've been able to do in the city. And with that, I still think that having consensus building, collaborative mayor is much more beneficial to the city. There will be areas that, I can be a little more aggressive on. I think what's happening on our streets requires me to be a little more aggressive and more clear on what we're doing to change things that are happening on our streets to make them less dangerous.
How would Ed Lee, the nice guy, show that kind of side in the coming 4 years?
By indicating, first of all, where our compassion is for people that need our help. That's always what I've been taught is let's show our humanity first. And once people believe that we have the best intention, and I do, then we have to have the order that comes in to reinforce that, such that the dangerous stuff that happens or the unhealthy things that happen, we have answers for them, and then we all line everybody up to go in that direction so that there is a substantive, qualitative change of what happens on the streets. Because I do think that people who come up to me say, what's happening on the street, I just don't feel comfortable with, Mayor. And, I'm walking to work and, God, I see and smell this stuff. That's not what we invested here for. You got to make a change there. And I understand you're not going to just push people to somebody else's neighborhood. We understand that. But come up with the better solution then. What is it that we can all do? I think people have been waiting patiently for me to do that. And I said, I got to do it in a way in which I know that there'll be sustained answers to it, and I'm very willing to do that.
What about taking sort of a radical step, like Los Angeles just announced it's going to invest $100 million to address its homeless problem?
They call it a state of emergency.
They call it a state of emergency. I mean, it seems a little bit like very deliberative, taking I don't know if it's small steps, but taking a step like creating a navigation center, but it seems a little bit like working around the edges. What about something very bold, big initiative, 100 million, 50 million, whatever it might be?
Well, do you know how much we spend already on homelessness? $560 million a year.
We could double it.
Yeah. Yes. I think it's not about the money. I know money. I know that LA, maybe the administration there is reacting to a lot of non-investment in solving the issues. I don't know. I know that we have, and mayors before me have invested incredible amounts of resources. The question is it working? And that's why I think scaling up a navigation center that not only is working, it is being embraced by the very people that are challenged by homelessness.
You've
got to have
6,800
that.
homeless on the street, Mr. Mayor. You just said that. And the navigation center is
200 people.
yeah, and it's the kind of flavor of the day in a sense for you, just like Karen Cash was with your predecessor. We're not making much progress here on the numbers.
Well,
and I just wonder what you could say to voters who are impatient at a string of plans that aren't really denting the problem.
Well, to want to make sure, bold announcements are not going to cut it if you can't back it up. If LA wants to spend $100 million, what are they going to do? What are you going to do with the $100 million? It sounds like a big number, but if they don't have the ultimate result and can prove to you that a dollar of it's going to go and be sustained transformation of people's lives, then $100 million could be $1 billion, and it wouldn't cause the changes. I think the scale that we have demonstrates that if we have more of these centers with the kinds of things that we're doing, it can transform people's lives. And by the way, I'm also a firm believer, and I know this is part of my dashboard at the Navigation Center, but 16% of the people that came through the first 200 put up their hands and said, I want to go home. Because you've gotten me to a situation, a point where I understand, and you've given me an opportunity to call my family. They know now that I've got a chance to be a little better companion or family member. 16% of them wanted to go back to their homes because we linked them up with people, not just, we're not going to ever give people a ticket to go back home. They actually have family members that want them back, and they know it, and through the Nav Center, they've reached that decision, and they're ready, and we support them in the reunification of their families. That's an incredible number. That is a good number. That is a good story because of bringing people. That is part of. That is as significant as the individual that we're trying to get back into an ability to work for themselves and support themselves and be in housing and off the street.
Let's let Spencer get a question.
I mean, you cited, you spoken in length, Spencer Whitney, part of the assistant editor, editorial section. You spoken in length about the economic growth in the city in regards to, the tech industry, companies moving on Market Street, as well as talking about the role of how, good a public school system is. And, it's a good place to raise families and things like that. But my question is, if we're looking forward, a lot of these jobs, especially in the tech industry, that's seen tremendous growth recently. A lot of those jobs are coming from out of the state. People are migrating into the city, and that's part of the reason a lot of people talk about kind of displacement in a lot of these areas like the Mission and other places. So my question is, if there's a focus as well as working with the school system, are there any specific job-related programs that would be kind of geared towards youth? In regards to having a more homegrown workforce, in regards to maybe working
Great
in the
question.
tech industry.
Great question. Absolutely, absolutely, there is, and this is why I'm so proud of having been both a sponsor, as city administrator, as public works director. I pushed very hard on the local hire program. I pushed very hard for programs like City Build, where we knew we were going to have a robust construction. Why not are these jobs for the youth in Bayview and Hunters Point? But I also am smart enough to know that construction jobs are temporary, and that hopefully will get a lot of people into the trades. But I also know our new economy can't just be the one-trick pony of construction. So I've focused in my economic development office a variety of academies and training programs that reached into many communities. That's why I'm so excited to work with the business community on paid internships. This summer and year-round, over 7,000 paid internships for youth in San Francisco. 7,500 last year, over almost 7,500 this year. And guess where those jobs are? They're in both city departments, where people work alongside engineers to figure out better ways on the sewer system, on a sea level rise and challenges like that, or flooding or drought. They're working at the airport. They're also working at AECON and engineering companies that are partners. They're working at banks like Wells Fargo and B of A and Citibank. They're working at technology companies like Salesforce figuring out what they're doing and how working in the cloud would benefit a city. Over 7,000 paid internships focused on low-income youth was incredible, and we're going to keep that up. At the same time, my job training is focused on, I got a healthcare academy. You know, everybody believes because technology is so sexy in the city, and you got great worldwide companies like Salesforce and Twitter. But the reality is the biggest economic driver today in San Francisco is healthcare. And in the healthcare field, anchored by UCSF, all the incredible pharmaceutical research arms that they have, and QB3 and some of these others in Mission Bay, they are the biggest jobs. And I know that hospital workforce is incredibly important. We have 5 hospitals under construction in San Francisco. One's almost complete. Chinese Hospital, CPMC, St. Luke's, our General Hospital, UCSF. And all of them need thousands of trained employees, health clinicians, health workers, and these are all part of our healthcare academy that we're recruiting in. I got a healthcare academy, I got Citadel for construction. Now we have more and more SF Tech, trying to get people into, they can't be platform engineers, is where I think the new startups had a lot of investments, but they can clearly be the people that are designing their webs for them. I got these young kids that are outrageously talented in art, and they are actually designing these websites for the startup companies that are still pre-IPO, but they've gone through their platform engineers. Now they're hiring locally, and we're encouraging them, of course, to hire more women, to hire more minorities, and this is the talent that we're recruiting. I've got to have an education system that supports that. I have an Education Leadership Council. Who's part of it? UCSF, San Francisco State, Golden Gate University, Hastings, our school system, Pacific Union. All of these education institutions are linking up through the mayor's office with the companies that are hiring for the future. And I've got healthcare, I've got tourism, hospitality, I got tech, and the 4th area that we're really focused on is local manufacturing.
Mr. Mayor, our time is just about up, but I can't let you get away without asking you a quick question about Sanctuary City. The death of Kate Steinle on the waterfront in July created a real hot spotlight on the city's Sanctuary City policies, as you well know. One of the Republican presidential candidates last week in a debate was even suggesting that mayors and elected officials in Sanctuary City should be jailed. You've been critical of Sheriff Mercarimi's decision to go beyond what you interpreted as the city law and cutting off all communications with ICE. Are you prepared to support legislation along the lines of what Mark Farrell has introduced that would codify that it is possible for the law enforcement to have communications with immigration authorities?
Well, I support Mark Farrell's legislation, but I also will back it up by this. First of all, I want to signal to the Steinle family that my condolences, because this should never happen. Now, having said that, we did great study about why it occurred. This was nothing to do so much with Sanctuary City. I think Sanctuary City policy was injected into it, where I felt it was much more of a law enforcement decision, that when it comes to convicted felons, and certainly in this case, someone who had multiple convictions, it's a law enforcement decision. And in law enforcement, communication is the key. It's the key to dealing with criminals, people who are convicted criminals. You have to have a good level of communication. Why would you institute a gag order of your law enforcement staff from communicating with Fed and state on convicted felons?
But Mayor,
and that's senseless. And for someone to invoke a strong sanctuary policy for the city as a defense for that, I think it's incredible abuse.
Why wouldn't the city want to help ICE deport somebody with we know that Mr. Lopez Sanchez doesn't have a violent felony record, but he has a lot of felony convictions. Why would you pass an ordinance that says we don't want to help ICE deport this guy.
Well, again, I don't think we have an ordinance. Have an ordinance, when you read it, that has a very strong section, and I've read it again and again, and it's very clear. When it comes to felons and convicted felons, nothing in the sanctuary city prohibits communication. So this is why I focused on the sheriff's independent action, apart from what the ordinance says, that suggests that no one in his staff can communicate. And that's why I feel strongly he was wrong, and this is part of what led to the circumstances that allowed this person to come back to San Francisco. And I think you know all the facts. What are we even doing having someone come back on a 20-year-old marijuana charge? That doesn't make sense. So part of Farrell's thing, legislation, is to correct that, to say, you know, if the entities are not going to even prosecute on this stuff, why even, I mean, we spent city dollars bringing this individual back. That's ridiculous use of city dollars right there.
But
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But
One
it
quick
does say
follow-up. I know
violent
we're
felony.
over
It
time.
does.
One
It
quick
does say
follow-up. I know
violent
we're
felony.
over
It
time.
does. It says violent felony in the last 7 years, and that doesn't apply here. Why would the city not want to? Why would the city want to stand in the way of ICE deporting somebody who's a basically career felon?
Yeah. Well, again, I think I'm a supporter of our sanctuary city, but I think the language in there promotes communication when it comes to felons and convicted felons, and I think that that's where we should continue to have strong communications with other agencies, be they federal or state. But that doesn't take away from our embracement of a policy that I think for many years since Senator Feinstein, and I think she.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay, with that,
Mr. Mayor,
with that Star Trek approach.
thank you very much. Thank you for coming to talk with us, and extra points for engaging in our experiment with transparency here. And for those who are watching on sfchronicle.com, send us your comments and feedback. Tweet it out with the hashtag AskSF. Mayor, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks again. Appreciate it.
We survived it. Thanks so much.